Joining us on the line to discuss the legality of what Democrats are now pushing in the House and the Senate is Gene Hamilton. He's president of America First Legal and former deputy White House counsel. Gene, thanks so much for the time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.
So one of the things that we've been hearing is the Democrats are pushing for the possibility of yet another partial government shutdown with regard to the Department of Homeland Security. And we've heard rumors that they are pushing the idea that every arrest must be accompanied by a judicial warrant for ICE to effectuate it. What does that mean? What are we talking about? What is the legal basis for administrative warrants, which is typically what ICE uses when they're effectuating an arrest for illegal immigration?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question, and thanks for asking it. Civil immigration enforcement is the standard routine immigration enforcement that ICE has engaged in for decades. Immigration to the United States and immigration out of the United States tends to be a civil matter. Now, there are criminal penalties associated with violating those civil matters. So if you come into the United States illegally, you've committed a crime. If you come into the United States after being deported again, you have committed a crime. There are lots of other crimes that are associated with it. But generally speaking, immigration is a civil function of the federal government. And so what happens is that you have a system that's built in the executive branch to handle this, where you have ICE within the Department of Homeland Security. They conduct arrests, they detain aliens in the United States, and they handle deportations. Their cases, if they have a case that's being heard in immigration court, people have heard about the immigration court backlog, all kinds of different things. Those are actually Department of Justice lawyers who are functioning as judges who are adjudicating the cases. There's no involvement of Article 3 of the federal court system. There's no involvement, and it's never been that way. And it's for good reason. It's because these are cut and dry civil offenses. This goes to the ultimate authority of any national government anywhere across the world. We're not talking about really complicated legal trials that are at issue that need to be heard before an Article 3 judge, and there's going to go to the Court of Appeals and then the Supreme Court, and there's going to be some massive precedent-setting case that's going to arise that had to arise in an Article 3 district court context. Everybody knows anytime you get involved in litigation in federal court, it's going to take time. It's going to take years to adjudicate a civil claim. It often takes a lot. It can take, depending on the complexity, a long time to adjudicate criminal cases. So with that background and that table setting, imagine if ICE, every time that they wanted to go arrest an alien, instead of being able to do it on their own, like Congress directed in the immigration laws, ICE has authority to conduct warrantless arrests in many different circumstances, and the warrants that they do use are administrative civil warrants. But now imagine if they had to go to a federal judge every single time that they wanted to go arrest an illegal alien, they wanted to engage in some kind of action. It would crush the federal court system. The volume would be absolutely crushing. There's already 1-something million cases pending in the immigration courts today. There are millions of illegal aliens who are here today. It would suck up every resource that's present in the federal government now to be able to adjudicate these matters. And so it's for good reason that they're not currently done that way. The Democrats in Congress, they know this, and they want this to come to a crushing halt. I mean, they just don't want anybody to be deported. And so they know that if they toss this thing on, that if you're an average American and you're just kind of sitting there thinking, oh, well, that doesn't sound so bad. Why couldn't they go get a judicial warrant? They know that the end game is the complete slowdown and stoppage of the immigration enforcement in the United States, which means that they would achieve their objectives while Donald Trump's in office that they were trying to do while Joe Biden was here, which is, of course, bring in as many people as they can, don't deport anybody, and see what happens to the electorate.
I think one of the things Democrats are relying upon is that when people hear warrant, the first thing they think of is law and order. They think of a judge granting a warrant. They don't know that there are these things called administrative warrants. And I think people really don't sort of engage with the law enforcement system this way frequently. So they don't think about the idea that if you're arrested, for example, for going 100 miles an hour in a school zone, it's not as though the cop is pulling you over, calling up a judge and asking for a warrant to arrest you. They're just arresting you. And you know, the sort of attempt to jerry-rig a rationale for not arresting people is pretty astonishing, which goes to the sort of Democrats' new attempt, and it really is it's not new, but it's certainly ramped up to obstruct federal law enforcement in general. So Tom Homan, I believe, the borders are, has done a much better job of laying out exactly what the Trump administration is trying to do than the DHS Secretary Kristi Noem. But the things that DHS has been doing, that ICE and Border Patrol have been doing in Minneapolis, these are well within the purview of ICE and Border Patrol, and they always have been, going back through the Clinton or Obama administrations, the Biden administration.
Yeah, look, we are talking about immigration enforcement that used to be routine, bipartisan matter that people agreed upon. Hey, if you're an illegal alien, you need to go home. You need to be deported. Now, especially if they say you're an illegal alien who's committed additional crimes in the United States, it used to be universal consensus that even that population needed to go. You can look at old quotes and clips from Hillary Clinton, from Barack Obama, from Joe Biden, from every Democrat that has been on the national scene over the last several decades. And they used to say these things. But of course, now where the rubber's actually meeting the road in Minneapolis, where ICE and CBP have been engaging in targeted operations, going after these convicted criminals who either have removal orders or who, because of the sanctuary city policies in Minnesota, ICE doesn't have the ability to detain after they've been encountered by law enforcement. And so these guys and gals are engaging in things that everybody used to agree was good. And it was good for society, and it was necessary. It's a necessary function of any sovereign government. But yet what we see now through the agitators present in Minneapolis, present across other cities across the United States, well-funded, well-organized, being pushed from all kinds of different folks behind the scenes, all kinds of different Marxist networks behind the scenes that are trying to create this image of resistance, of overreach by the Trump administration. And they're trying to do this because they want to convince the average American that they have more in common with the struggles of some illegal alien who came here and committed multiple DUIs, and that somehow it's the modern civil rights fight of the day. This is just like Rosa Parks during the civil rights movement. And so if you're not aligned with Rosa Parks, then my God, you must be a fascist. You must be a Nazi. You must be all these kinds of different things. And it's because this is just the Marxist worldview time and time again coming out in different ways, in different manners, where they have to create this constant clash, right, between classes. They have to create this illusion of this constant fight so they can maintain their fundamental ideology, which at the root of which leads to the destruction of our society. So when we of our constitutional republic, and so when we see what they're doing on the streets of Minneapolis, when these are things that were routine, these are things that happened under administrations of both parties years in the past, maybe not to the number that we're seeing today because they didn't have the same types of personnel, they didn't have the same types of resources, but things that were done. And now they're trying to turn it into the modern, civil rights fight of the day. I think you can kind of understand what's happening here and what their ultimate objective is.
Yeah, Gene, I think that the point that you're making here also underscores why the Trump administration really needs to retail the best version of its PR, because this obviously is a chaos operation with a massive PR angle. It is not an attempt to prevent law enforcement from committing some sort of crime. It's an attempt to obstruct law enforcement through the mechanism of bad press, essentially. And so that's why, when I'm critical of Kristi Noem in the way that, for example, she characterizes situations like Renee Good or Alex Preddy in the immediate aftermath, and that creates a backlash that is unnecessary. The sort of low-key, let's go enforce the law approach of a Tom Homan seems significantly better calibrated to achieve the goals of the administration than the sort of colorful chaos that sometimes seems to attend some of the people who have now been actually put out of camera view in the Trump administration, people like Greg Bovino.
Yeah, I mean, look, there are lots of folks with lots of different views on the PR angle here. And look, again, immigration enforcement is not anything new per se. Now, we might have forgotten about it for the last 4 years as a society because Joe Biden didn't engage in any of it. But immigration enforcement, arrests of illegal aliens or of aliens who have committed offenses in the United States, is a very routine thing. It's a routine part of life. It's something that every nation with the means across the world does. every single day. Try to go violate the immigration laws in China. Try to go violate the immigration laws in anywhere else in the world as an American, and you will face the enforcement of those immigration laws against you. You'll be deported. You'll be put in jail. You'll be any number of things potentially done to you. And so we're not unique in our need, in our desire to engage in this type of law enforcement operation. It doesn't do anything to make us less of a country or less of a people to actually deport folks who have violated our laws. In fact, quite the opposite. It's very what's most upsetting to me is that when you look at a lot of the ties and connections that are being laid out kind of in public discourse about what these groups were involved in, especially in Minneapolis, you look at their signal chats, you look at who was in those groups, people who aren't just agitators, but people allegedly who appear to be members of government, members of other non-governmental organizations, members of all kinds of aspects of society who are appear to be conspiring together to impede the enforcement of our laws. And what they want is they want to draw out this kind of backlash. They want to draw out this kind of conflict for the reasons we've discussed earlier, because then they can say, oh, look, these fascists are overreaching. They're doing too much. They're running around on the streets. Now you as an American citizen, you're at risk of being, detained by ICE, which is just garbage. Statistically speaking, it's complete and absolute garbage. But it is their end goal. And of course, PR does have an aspect here that is important for the American people to pay attention to.
Well, that's Gene Hamilton. He's president of America First Legal, former deputy White House counsel. Gene, thanks so much for the time and insight.
Thanks for having me on.